Ministers, Excellencies, all members of staff of the CTU, everyone, please, let's get going. We will be pressed for time. And I thank you for the accelerated pace in which you would have had to eat lunch and for your prompt and swift return. We again would like to move at pace to remain within timing. I know we have a number of additional items set up. So firstly, let me again welcome everyone. Minister Maynard, I may borrow from your speech last night, a warm welcome to this evening's proceedings. It is the joint meeting of the 51st Executive Council and the 30th General Council Conference of Ministers. We do have a fairly packed agenda this afternoon, and without much ado, I'll just ask the Secretary General to say a few words and we will get directly into the presentations. So again, thanks for coming back on time. Thanks for the accelerated pace, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good afternoon as well. I would just want to extend my greetings as well to you, and thanks for your interest in participating in this joint session. As you know, we had a very successful seminar on Monday. The week consists of a number of different engagements. This morning, we held a meeting with our Executive Council members. This meeting is joint, as pointed out by Minister Bacchus. And tomorrow, we have a closed session with the General Conference of Ministers, where we'll address a number of regional issues by way of resolution. We were pleased to have an interest from 3 new private sector companies. Some of them are here, Google, Amazon, and no. Welchman King, yeah, three new private companies, and that have demonstrated their interest and has seen the value of becoming members of these of the CTU, and of course these are well-respected companies, and we welcome them and look forward to collaborating with them to deliver on regional projects. So without further ado, I will hand back over to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, SG. Like I said, we'll go straight into the presentations, and I will ask the presenters to please be mindful and respectful of the time allocated, not only for yourselves, but for the others who have to present, who will be subsequent. And such, I will try to keep a hard stop and inform as your time winds down. So first on the agenda, we have Michelle Hector Fontenelle, who is the Director of Economics and Finance at ECTEL. And of course, the topic, as we all know, is the EC bill, right? And we're dealing with transformation of the digital landscape. So Cheryl, please, you have 20 minutes. And I can, if you wish, give you a timing at 5 minutes. Okay, thanks very much, and proceed. The floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you, and good afternoon to everybody. And we'd like to thank the CTU for this opportunity to speak about the EC bill. We are currently, Women in ECTEL, we are currently conducting a communications campaign for the new electronic communications bill. I think those of us who know anything about ECTEL know that we have been working on this for a while, and we are getting ever closer to the finish line. And we are, part of our process is to have a sort of sensitization campaign, not just about the EC bill, but also just to remind persons or to inform persons of who we are at ECTEL and what we do. So just a quick reminder for those persons who may not be too familiar, ECTEL is a treaty organization. It was established in 2000 by 5 of the countries in the OECS, which we have named here, the Commonwealth of Dominica, Grenada, St. Kitts and Nevis. So your host is a member of ECTEL, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And the main purpose of ECTEL is really to provide advice to our member states, and in particular to the national telecommunication regulatory commissions in each member state. So ECTEL is a regional body, and we are essentially an advisory body. The actual regulators of telecommunications in the member states are located in each country, and that is the NTRC, or the National Telecommunications Regulatory Commission. And I believe we have at least 2 persons here representing NTRCs. When ECTEL was formed, the purpose really was to ensure that we had open access to the telecommunications, now electronic communications market in our region, to ensure that we have universal service and access. Fair pricing and competitive pricing was a concern of the member states, so again, ECTEL is required to promote that. And very importantly, for the ECTEL system to really work, we have harmonized rules across the 5 member states, so that if a telecom operator is operating in one member state, the exact same rules would apply in another member state. And all this is being done in an environment where what we are really concerned about is increasing connectivity, increasing access for persons who do not have access to telecoms and ICT services. In particular, what we are here to talk about is the new Electronic Communications Bill. And that bill we started working on this bill quite a few years ago, and the intention was really to upgrade the rules and regulations with regards to the telecommunications sector. The acts that are now in place, the Telecommunications Acts, they started, I believe, sometime around 1998, between 1998 and 2000, those acts were in place. So it's well over almost 25 years now. And we expect that the EC bill will repeal and replace those acts once it comes into force. And one of the things that we are focused on under the EC bill is consumers. I like to remark that if you read the Telecommunications Act, I don't think the word consumer or customer is anywhere in there. It was heavily focused on do's and don'ts for the licensees. And over the last 20 some odd years, we have noted that, again, for the sector to work, for digital transformed economies to work, you have to be focused on the actual users of ICT. And therefore, the EC bill is meant to really modernize the regulatory framework in which ECTEL operates. Where are we with regards to adoption of the bill? As I said, it's been, I don't want to say slow, but we are operating at a moderate pace. And at present, we have 3 of the 5 member states have actually brought the bill to Parliament. It is not yet enforced in any of the states because the Council of Ministers are minded that we don't want to have, the whole purpose of ECTEL was to have harmonized rules. So we are trying to avoid having a system where within ECTEL we have 2 systems operating, the old system and the new system. So the Council of Ministers are committed to coming together, again, in a harmonized way, and having the ECTEL bill be enforced in all the member states sort of at the same time. So we are 3 down, we are 3/5 of the way, and we have just the Commonwealth of Dominica and St. Lucia as the last 2 members to enact the bill and therefore allow for everybody to bring it into force. And I have to say that they are on their way. The bill is before, various subcommittees of the Parliament and Cabinet before it continues its journey. Why do we want to move away from the Telecommunications Act and enforce the new EC bill? As I indicated, one of the main things is really try to focus a little bit more on consumers. And I have around 9 benefits that we have identified. These are the ones that we are sort of promoting and talking about. And then I have further highlighted, again, mindful of time, I have highlighted a few that I will just take a little minute to talk about. But just to get sort of run through the list, as it were, we expect that the bill essentially will reform our legislation. There will be a new law, new regulations, new orders emanating from that bill. One of the areas of concern for us is the submarine cable markets. We will have rules that will address that. As I said, consumer protection is a very big area. Universal service and access. We already have a universal service fund in every ECTEL member state, but the rules will be enhanced to somewhat to sort of make the universal service fund much more relevant. A very important thing that we have identified is a need to let the USF fund also assist young entrepreneurs. So that is a new feature that we have introduced in our USF fund. establishment of a tribunal, competitive digital markets. Again, what we are trying to do is to make sure that in line with our purpose under the treaty, that the market is competitive. Affordable prices for all, again, fair pricing, as we said. We want rules for improved quality of service. It has been a very difficult area for us in the last few years. Establishment of our NTRCs as body corporates. Right now, the NTRCs are not legal entities in their own right. They are almost sort of a department of government, and the intention is to have them be legal entities in their own right under the new Electronic Communications Act. There will be rules with regards to the change of ownership of companies within the telecommunications/electronic communications market. And also, we have a challenge with the current bill where we don't have what I would call appropriate penalties. In fact, we have one major penalty for almost any breach of the Telecommunications Act, and that is revocation of a license. I mean, this is not practical in almost any market. And so one of the areas that we have focused on is having rules that are, penalties that are more in proportion with whatever the breach or the offense is. So just to speak a little bit on some of the ones, as I said, that I had highlighted that we thought, we would want to sort of talk a little bit more about. Regulated access to submarine cable landing stations. We know that we all want our broadband market to be vibrant. We want to have as many competitors in the market as possible, but everybody cannot have their own submarine cable. That's just not, again, not practical. And right now, we have no rules with regards to how a service provider who doesn't have their own submarine cable can access submarine cable of another service provider. And that has created no end of difficulties and problems for us. And so the new bill will have specific rules about how service providers can access submarine cables. Now, we know that we are all speaking about satellites, and that is another way to get access to the internet off island, but we still believe that subsea cables are still a very important way to ensure that we have a vibrant broadband market. And so that is one of the areas that is specifically targeted with the new EC bill. Consumer protection. As I indicated, under the Telecommunications Act, there was very little rules about how the service providers would engage with customers. It was a lot about how the service providers would engage with the regulator and how they would engage with themselves to some extent. And so some of the rules that we are enshrining in the Act and its regulations is that information, in particular, information presented to customers should be transparent. Customers should have clear information about the services that they're receiving, the price for those services, the terms and conditions of those services. And as and when these terms and conditions change, there is a process for how that change can be communicated to customers. Clear and understandable contracts and bills. And then we have here the right to choose. Customers do have the right to choose right now. We have number portability in place, but some of these things we want to sort of enshrine them in law. There are a number of practices that have developed over the last 20-odd years, some of which we want to enshrine into law, because one of the challenges we have had is that a service provider may have a practice that is very good and customers enjoy it, and then they just decide to change it because there is nothing preventing them from changing it, and then customers are confused. And so we are trying to ensure that customers there is a way for customers to be informed of what is happening in the sector in a more sort of organized way. We want them to access complaints filing. Again, we have a system in place, but our aim is to streamline it and make it more user-friendly. Then we expect that some of these rules will empower customers, hopefully, if they have more information at their disposal, and they know that this information is not just that the service provider is providing the information. The service provider has to provide that information so they can request the information. Hopefully, with that additional information, they can make more informed decisions. In terms of some of the issues we've had with quality of service, we want to put in some rules so that service providers will be held accountable in some way for delivering the services that they have promised, and that there are ways we can monitor what it is that they're promised and versus what they're delivering. And we want to look at rules again for fair pricing and ensuring that there aren't any hidden fees. I'm not saying that there are hidden fees. We want to make sure that, if that is not allowed, as it were. In terms of the establishment of a tribunal, right now we have a system where if a customer has a complaint, they first try to resolve it with the service provider, then they go to the NTRC, and in some cases the NTRC sits as a tribunal. But we have been advised that as the system matures, an independent tribunal is a more equitable way for customers to have their matters resolved. It will not be the first port, but it will be essentially a place that they can go if they're not happy with how the matter was resolved. And what we are hoping is that this will also be more cost-effective in terms of customers not having to, pay a lawyer and incur a big expense in order to get a matter resolved, because the tribunal will be essentially funded under the regulatory system. Affordable services, one of the things that we are working on, and we are hoping that we will have buy-in from service providers, because I listened with interest when Flo was talking about their JUMP program. So what we would like is to ensure that customers have an affordable option. What I've noticed, and I've said before, is that sometimes when you look at the broadband market, if you compare it to the car market, it's almost as if everybody wants to sell you a Mercedes-Benz. Somebody just wants to drive. Somebody wants a Toyota. Somebody wants a Mazda. But all we have in the market are Rolls-Royce and Mercedes-Benz. That's not a good market. And so what we would like to encourage is that there are affordable prices or affordable packages for customers, especially customers who are not able, or they don't want, all the bells and whistles. Rules with regards to wholesale pricing. Right now, again, we have a number of struggles. Interconnection in the region, and I think around the world, is pretty much a solved problem. You hardly ever get difficulties of interconnection. But in the wholesale market, you now have a new set of difficulties and challenges rearing their heads, and we don't have clear rules for those. And so the EC bill does hope to put together a regulation, there's a regulation under the EC bill that will address specifically wholesale pricing. And then we have an issue which is ongoing, that is under the Telecoms Act, where we continue to say that there should be no price discrimination for customers who are sort of in the similar situations. Improved quality of service. I don't think I have to say that we have struggled, I think, in CARICOM with quality of service in the last few years, and especially in the OECS. And so what we would like is to have a set of regulations that are a bit clearer on what are the quality of service standards that we expect, and how we're going to monitor it, and how we are going to work with service providers to ensure that those services are provided to the quality that we are all agreed to, and how matters will be resolved as and when quality of service standards are not met. And essentially, that in a sort of nutshell is the main areas that I wanted to just talk to in regards to the EC bill. But the EC bill is not being done in isolation. It is really being done as part of a much broader project in the OECS region, which is called the Caribbean Digital Transformation Project. So again, the member governments of the OECS have embraced the idea of digitally transforming their economies, and so it's being addressed in a multifaceted way. So as the telecom advisor with the telecom regulators, we are tasked with shepherding the ICT section. And so we will be, although we are just going to put the EC bill in place, we know it's not perfect. So we'll be taking an opportunity to take a look at it and see if there's anything we missed that we need to correct going forward. We also want to develop, I think we've all talked about the idea of having resilient networks. So that is an area of interest for us right now. And so part of the work that we are doing, if you want to have a digital economy where everybody is using the internet, everybody is on some kind of broadband service, that have to be a resilient network. And we have had multiple experiences of how the network has failed us. And so we have to find ways of ensuring that that does not happen going into the future. And we have also just completed a digital inclusion survey, but we will talk about that at another time. So the other partners we have under the Digital Transformation Project, we have the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. We are at the home of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank in St. Kitts and Nevis. And they are tasked with ensuring that we have updated payment system acts. They have also done a digital inclusion survey. That information is out in the public. And so if you want to know the state of financial inclusion, in the member states, that survey has been published. And they will also be working on designing a regional instant payment system to not just look at banks, but banks as well as non-bank financial institutions. We are trying to have a more inclusive financial system. The other two partners are Impacts, who will be dealing with the cybersecurity, and I've just identified some of the areas that they will be looking at, including setting up of a CERT. And then we have digital skills, which is being shepherded by the OECS, and we are also looking at projects to address data protection and privacy, and that is being done jointly with the OECS and the ECCB, with ECTEL providing support on the margins. And so thank you very much. I think I've made it within the time allotted. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak about ECTEL and the ECB. Thank you.
Please, while you're there, you did stay within time, and thank you very much for that. As a result of that, if there are any questions anyone has relative to what has been said, if not, certainly there are opportunities to present questions on this. The Secretariat will take those questions and we'll get them to you for the appropriate responses. Again, thank you very much for a clear and lucid presentation as we continue, as we move forward. Thanks again. Nothing? Next is another matter, again, that is of critical importance to us. And this deals with Smart Seas and the Smart Seas initiative and the things that have been going on relative to the protection of our fisher folk and our people at sea and our marine pieces. To do that, we'll have Mr. Tariq Mohammed, the ITU project officer, to do this. And again, Tariq, again, be mindful. There are timers there that you can see, and reminders will come up. We're trying to stick to time, so please proceed. The floor is yours.
Thank you and good afternoon. Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon to everyone. So I'm Tariq Mohammed, here to present on Smart Seas. So as we wait for the slides to come up, I hope everyone had a good lunch. Did anyone have fish for lunch? You all enjoy the fish? If you did, then this presentation is for you. Okay, so in the Caribbean over the past few years, we've made a lot of progress in digital transformation and including and connecting the unconnected. Unfortunately, I'm here to say that there are still some vulnerable communities that remain unconnected. These forms of exclusion look at affordability as well as overall accessibility. And to achieve affordable, accessible ICTs for all, we need action and collaboration across several agents within the communications ecosystem. Policymakers, regulators, service providers, innovators, and the list goes on and on and on. So, as I mentioned, fish. We're here today to talk about small-scale fishers. And these fishers comprise about 90%, or actually over 90%, 94% of the global fisheries fleet, and are responsible for approximately 40% of fish we consume on a daily basis. Fishing itself is no easy task, as these small-scale fishers, as we call them, go out at sea every day in these small wooden vessels that we call pirogues, and are highly vulnerable, both from their livelihoods perspectives, as they are digitally and financially excluded, as well as their lives, as they are physically vulnerable to a number of disasters that they may face at sea. This ultimately feeds into the issue of fishing being considered one of the world's most dangerous jobs, with thousands of lives being lost at sea by fishers annually. ICTs, of course, play a very critical role in both supporting the lives and livelihoods of not just fishers, but everyone. And simply having access, physical access to ICTs, having a device in your hand is not enough. The enabling environment is essential to promoting affordable, accessible ICTs. So, considering that, ITU, CTU, and TAT, through the support of the government of Trinidad and Tobago, have come together and launched the Smart Seas Toolkit for Disaster Resilience Project, or the Smart Seas Project as we call it for short. The aim of this project is to increase the resilience and ultimately preserve and save the lives of small-scale fishers through ICTs, with an emphasis on this enabling environment. So the project itself looks, geographically speaking, 4 Caribbean countries. So that is Trinidad and Tobago, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Barbados, as well as Grenada. And it's bounded by this red region that we see here, which is about 62,000 square nautical miles. A very big area. Why this area? Because Trinidad and Tobago functions as the Search and Rescue Region, SRR, and is responsible for rescue coordination at sea in these 4 areas. Ultimately, as we do focus on ICTs, the beneficiary sector is that of fisheries. The project itself looks at supporting policy and regulations, operations, capacity, and technology. And though these are being established through this scope, ultimately, the outputs, outcomes, and impacts should be transferable to other underserved and vulnerable communities and extensible to the rest of the Caribbean region as well as internationally. So these are just some examples of the communications at sea that we use. On the left-hand side, we look at those that are more for life-saving. So we have the radios, we have the EPIRBs, the AIS SART, search and rescue transponders. And on the right-hand side, more livelihood supporting, satellite phones, as well as the upcoming direct-to-device, hopefully in a few years. Looking at the project itself, we have 4 main outputs: a gap analysis of the enabling environment for the 4 countries, an online smart seas toolkit, the procurement of equipment for the beneficiary countries, and an agenda for accessible communications for small-scale fishers. The outcomes, which are the short-term goals, are to have a capacitated ecosystem as well as to strengthen the enabling environment, while the impacts, which are the long-term goals, are to really have disaster-resilient small-scale fishers. So based on the gap analysis that we conducted, we looked at 6 main areas: compliance with UN conventions and recommendations, the ecosystem, policy and regulatory environment, operations, and capacity. And of the countries, we made a lot of observations, gaps being represented in black, as well as other findings in green. Most notably, we do see an overlap in the responsibilities. So because the maritime and this project overlaps with maritime, fisheries, and telecommunications, there is also an overlap and redundancy in the operations of agencies, which ultimately results in things falling through the cracks, unfortunately. This is most notably seen in the compliance, as with radio regulations and other IMO, International Maritime Organization regulations, gaps do exist, and we'll talk more about that in a second. I do have an example of the gaps, and one of the tools that we created coming out of this gap analysis is an opportunity estimator, which already extracts all of the relevant UN recommendations and regulations and allows you to essentially use this chart that we see on the right-hand side to determine the impact as well as effort required to fill the gaps. What is the opportunity to fill the gaps that exist? Here, for example, we use one of the key ITU radio regulations 20.16 with respect to notifying the ITU on your maritime stations. And that's a key gap that we face in the Caribbean. This all feeds into the overall Smart Seas Toolkit, which comprises a number of resources along the lines of strengthening regulations, operations, and capacity. And that is available on the ITU, CTU, as well as TAT's websites. Of course, we couldn't really start the project without understanding the different actors within the ecosystem. And as you can see here, it's really a lot at national, regional, and international levels. So the ecosystem really comprises a number of actors across maritime, telecommunications, fisheries, and the list goes on in terms of agencies, but also the respective policy and regulatory environments and whatever other resources are required to facilitate these communications. So as an example for the CTU member states, and the ECTEL presenter before me mentioned USF frameworks, of the 20 CTU member states, only 25% of them actually contain references to supporting maritime projects. This is a significant gap, as universal service funds can be used towards that to strengthen the disaster resilience as well as support communications at sea from an accessibility standpoint. Also, in terms of compliance with this notification radio regulation 20.16, before the start of the Smart Seas project, only 2 of the 20 CTU member states have ever notified the ITUBR. This means that 90% were out of compliance. Through the Smart Seas project, we were able to decrease that 90% to 65. We increased the number of notifications from 2 to 4, so we doubled that, and 3 more countries are currently in the process of preparing their notifications to submit to the ITUBR. Finally, the Agenda for Accessible Communications at Sea Solutions is ultimately a living report that we're developing right now that recognizes the current state of communications at sea and frames what accessible communications should look like. It recognizes that we aren't exactly there yet, and that gaps exist across a number of key areas, such as the devices, services, capacity, adoption, and the respective policy and regulatory environments. What we need to do through this activity is really identify the priorities or the action items that need to be taken at national, regional, and international levels to move from the state of where we are right now to that of one that enables accessible, affordable ICTs for the fishers. In dealing with this, we also had a workshop in March of this year, and you may see a lot of familiar faces here, President and SG, at our workshop. And we do have another workshop coming up called the Validation Workshop. So over the next few months, we'll be continuing to refine and develop the agenda. And after the workshop in January, hopefully publish that, and that'll be an online workshop. By the end of this month in October, we'll be publishing another interim report for which we would like to share with all of you for any comments and feedback that you may have on things that could or could not be included in this agenda report, and we'd love to hear from you. So just a few recommendations as I kind of look to wrap up here. So recommendations for the members include an ongoing review and revision of the USF frameworks. As I mentioned, there are gaps in terms of references to maritime, but an ongoing review will allow to really ensure that these are updated and see what other findings from digital inclusion surveys could be incorporated in them. Of course, we also need to, at the same time, consider ongoing reviews as appropriate and where applicable to national policies, regulations, and frameworks along the lines of including maritime environments within universal service scope and vulnerable populations such as small-scale fishers who earn their livelihoods at sea. Of course, as I mentioned, this is a very multi-sectoral, multi-stakeholder sort of problem that we're looking at. So the engagement within and among sectors is critical towards achieving accessible, affordable ICTs. So with that, I just want to thank you. We do have a link to the Smart Seas on the CTU's website, so you can scan here if you're interested in finding out more. We will also be putting up a project brief on the project status to date on the CTU's website for this event, and you can look out for an interim report on the agenda item coming very soon. So with that, I just want to thank you, and if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me afterwards. Thank you.
Well done, Tariq. Thank you very much, and a lot of information, food for thought. All of us, well, most of us, live on islands, and therefore this initiative is of critical importance as we try to safeguard the lives of our fisher folk. Note, however, that some of the devices you have would really not apply in a pirogue scenario, and especially where most of the issues that you have deal with overturned vessels. So if you have technology that will not withstand being overturned in water, it's not going to work. Next on the agenda, we have coming up the Commonwealth Model Law and Digital Trade, and we have Ms. Vashti Miraj, who is the advisor from the Commonwealth Connectivity Agenda, the CCA, who is here, who I met earlier today, doing good work. So please, again, we're keeping within time. I want to thank our presenters for doing that and being mindful of what we do. And please, Vashti, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, Secretary General. I am mindful that right now our presentation is standing between you and your coffee break. So we're going to be very direct, to the point, and as interesting as we can possibly be. So without more, we represent the Commonwealth Connectivity Agenda, and we are responsible for promoting trade and investment within the Commonwealth to a target of $2 trillion by 2030. And how exactly do we do that? We encourage global growth, knowledge sharing, employment creation, and development. And a lot of the discussions that have been held during the course of this week and that will continue tomorrow really share a lot of what are the initiatives that are taking place by a lot of the developmental partners within the region to drive this agenda. How do we do this? We work by supporting key areas in connectivity. So we support physical connectivity, which is connecting that last mile and ensuring that everyone has access to affordable and meaningful internet. We work on digital connectivity, and we really do champion digital transformation across the Commonwealth. Regulatory connectivity, which is what I'm going to go into great detail in our presentation today, and business-to-business connectivity. So what I'm here to talk to you about is moving to paperless trade across the Commonwealth. And it's not a trade topic. This is about building the digital economy. In everything that we do, we want to promote greater connectivity so that we can become more competitive, to create that ease of business, so that there can be greater trade and investment. And how do we go about doing that? I'm going to hand over to my colleague, our trade specialist, who is going to go through an economic analysis of why this is important to everybody here in this room.
Thank you very much, Vashti, and a very good afternoon to you, ministers, distinguished colleagues. My name is Neil Strasdens, trade specialist at the Commonwealth Secretariat. And as Vashti mentioned, the reason for our presentation is to promote the move from paper-based to paperless trade across the Commonwealth. So in the next few slides, I'll hope to lay the foundation as to why this is important for all of you individually here today, as well as for all of our 56 member countries. And we will do that by picking out some highlights from a study we commissioned to put some numbers to the imperative to transition to paperless trade, to illustrate what's possible in terms of cost reductions and additional trade if we all make the transition. So a few slides for you, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll begin with a breakdown of the current trade cost for Commonwealth Caribbean countries. You see that closer look on the screen here, and what it shows is that there is a persistently high trade cost for economies that act as barriers to growth for all of us here in the region. Now, these high trade costs are typically driven by manual documentation requirements, logistical inefficiencies, and lengthy customs procedures. Moving to a more digitized paperless system can alleviate much of this burden and help regional economies become much more competitive. So if you look at those figures, if you compare the trade costs for the Commonwealth Caribbean against the Commonwealth average, for example, you see that most economies in this region exceed this average. You'll see that a few actually experience trade costs that are over 80% of their trade revenues compared to a figure of 50% for the Commonwealth average. These types of disparities highlight the need for urgent transformation in this region. So if you look at trade costs as a whole, on total, one of the most impactful changes we can make to trade costs is reducing the time-consuming, costly paper-based processes that traditionally dominate trade. Digital documentation enables faster customs clearances, reduced delays, and streamlined logistics. And you can see here on this slide some of the cost reduction benefits to regional economies. So for instance, if we look at St. Lucia or Belize, where border compliance costs can exceed $1,000 per $25,000 shipment, which is a typical measurement of shipping, moving to digitized processes could cut these costs dramatically. But beyond cost savings, the broader impact also comes from reducing the unpredictability that businesses often face. Digitization leads to greater transparency. It makes it easier to track shipments, makes it easier to verify compliance, and helps ensure timely delivery. And it goes without saying, when businesses know that they can rely on efficient, predictable processes, they're more likely to invest, they're more likely to expand their operations. So that was cost reduction. That was that side of the ledger. Let's look at the additional trade side. We can see by moving to paperless trade on this slide here, we get a bigger picture of the transformative opportunity available for regional economies. By way of example, by digitizing trade processes, we can see that countries such as Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago could potentially unlock more than $9 billion each in additional trade over a 5-year period. And I'll stress that that was the time frame we looked at in this study. If we made these reforms, what is possible over a 5-year period? Now, again, these gains are driven by reduction in trade costs through faster border clearance, reduced reliance on physical documentation, and more efficient logistical operations. Now, that's the Caribbean on the slide there, ladies and gentlemen. If we take a step back and look at the entire Commonwealth, I know the graph on the left is a little bit tight, but these are extracts from the full report, which is available on our website, and as well, if you contact us, we'll be more than happy to have an in-depth conversation. But if we zoom out to the Commonwealth-wide picture, we see some very large figures that help illustrate the enormous potential and benefits in moving the paperless trade across our 56 member countries. So again, looking at that benchmark, that $25,000 unit, moving to paperless trade would reduce average border compliance costs across the Commonwealth from $521 to just $99 over that 5-year period I mentioned. It would also reduce transport costs from nearly $17,000 at the time of the study to just over $4,000 over the same time period. And moving to paperless trade would reduce average Commonwealth trade costs as a share of trade revenue from 63% to just 21% over 5 years. And this is the last slide I'll leave you with before handing back to my colleague, Vashti. And this sort of puts it all together, ladies and gentlemen. And we have 3 headline figures to leave you with in terms of this discussion, and they help illustrate the imperative for making this transition to paperless trade. By reducing border and transportation costs and tackling informal trade practices, we could unlock an additional $90 billion in Commonwealth trade over 5 years. In total, with cost reduction and greater access to trade finance, we could see an increase in Commonwealth trade by $1.1 trillion over 5 years, which combined with the original cost reduction gives us the total figure of $1.2 trillion in additional trade across the Commonwealth by 2026. That was the time period of this study. And I'll leave you with one thought. These are very large figures. They don't need to be precise either. Even if they're 80% accurate, the resulting figures are enormous and demonstrate the imperative for making this transition. And it is possible with the right reforms, starting with legal reform. And I think that's a great point to seg back to my colleague Vashti, who will talk about some of these legal reforms we're working to unlock and the tools and resources we're making available to our member countries in doing so. Thank you for your attention.
Niels pointed out the numbers, and facts should speak for themselves. The evidence that transitioning to legal reform in order to digitalize trade is something that we agree in the Caribbean. Through our national digital and sustainable development strategies, there are calls for bold and transformative steps in moving legal reform, and as a result of which we've established at the last Commonwealth Trade Ministers meeting, they have established a special Commonwealth Working Group on legal reform and digitalization. And how does this impact you? This is intended to actually be the primary driver to helping and assisting all its member states in undertaking the necessary legal reforms to promote better competitiveness and promote greater investments. And we have established that working group. And at present, we're doing work in terms of rendering support to all regions of the Commonwealth. We've started work in the Pacific and started assisting through legislative gap analysis, the conduct of case studies, as well as regional roadmaps. And the Caribbean is not to be left out. We are really here to invite our member states to express their interest in being involved in this process. We do believe that through providing qualitative assistance in recommendations for implementation, coming up with the legal reform roadmaps, but also providing direct assistance to member states in really bridging that gap, because it is clear that everybody realizes that there is a clear need for legal reform. It is how to do this in a harmonized and coherent way, and that is why we're looking at it from a Commonwealth model law approach, where every country can now adapt their approach based on their specific needs. So what is our call to action? We'd strongly encourage your participation in the Legal Consultative Task Force, as well as we'd invite member states within the Caribbean to express their interest in becoming involved in the Commonwealth Working Group on Legal Reform and Digitalization. And I think ultimately, the aim is to really go back to Commonwealth heads and trade ministers in 2026 to outline what are the steps that have been made, but how much further we can go together. On that note, I will hand back over to the chair, and thank you very much for your time and attention.
Again, thank you, Vashti, and thank you, team. Two things. These legal reforms and as they relate to digitalization, the thing that I might add as, not as a caution, but just the impacts for it would represent that there are really four pillars for transformation: people, process, technology, and legislation. And if we don't get all of them harmonized and operating in some level of synergy and unison, we're not going to be able to do this. We seem to leave the legislation to the legislators, but it is important that we as politicians and effectively legislators do what is required to remain in lockstep with the other three: advances in technology, advances in how things have to be done in digital processes, and changing the people and the culture in which we operate. Thanks again for that. I seek your indulgence to Excellencies, to be able to forego the 5-minute break. I think we just returned from lunch. Unless there is a dissenting voice, I'd like for us to continue into the program. Thank you very much. So next on the agenda, we dealing with digital payments facilitation, and this is Carib Dollar, and we have Dr. Jean Schroeder from the Foundation of CSA and Carib Coin to come and present to us on this fascinating and somewhat new in some cases way of doing things. So please, Dr. Schroeder, the floor is yours.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Honorable ministers, great to be in St. Kitts. We have learned a lot about how to do societal change yesterday. Prime Minister Mitchell said, "You have to want it." ITU's SG Dr. Martins put a call to collaboration forward. If you combine these two, it's a we want to have it. And if we want to have it, we just have to find out what it is. What is it? And this is what I want to talk about a little bit. It is a solution against the consequences of the de-risking policies of banks. It is a solution against the underserving the financial sector delivers to this region, with huge impacts for economic development. So, what I'd like to invite you to come to a we want to have it after these 10 to 12 minutes. So what do we want to have? Jointly introduce a complementary currency as a bridging technology for the Caribbean, Carib dollar, we call it. What does it bridge? It bridges gaps between the financial worlds and the different Caribbean nations, and it bridges gaps between today and the future, a future where we can unlock potential for sustainable, regenerative, and inclusive development of the Caribbean. Well, first of all, where do we come from? We come from a solution perspective. If you look at the financial system, the Caribbean is completely disconnected. It suffocates regional development and trade. We just went through that when we did our licensing procedure in the Cayman Islands. It took us 5 weeks to transfer $1,200 from Trinidad to Cayman Islands. We could do it by boat and we would be faster. So transfer of funds heavily relies on two things. They have to be correspondent banks, but they're de-risking. Why do they de-risk in a region which is so valuable, which has so many values? And on the other side, it depends on the US dollar, which is there or is not there. You know when you go to a bank if it's there. Sometimes it isn't, though you have a US dollar account. There's some numbers, but somehow it doesn't work. So our solution for this is the region should implement the so-called complementary currency. Complementary currencies live besides national currencies. So specifically, in Barbados, you could buy a Carib dollar. You can send it directly to whatever nation state, be it Jamaica, be it Trinidad, be it St. Lucia, be it St. Kitts, and there exchange it into the national currency. So it switches its behavior. Wherever it is, you can just exchange it. But even more and better you don't exchange it. Better you build value networks across the Caribbean, using Carib dollar for cross-border trade and make it crisscross across the region, and you can do this in 3 seconds, not 5 weeks or whatever it takes to transport money from one Caribbean nation state to the other one. And in addition to it, all this provides liquidity for regional trade, which is one of the problems we have in the region. So this is our solution for cross-border trade. This is the short-term perspective. I'll tell you in a minute how far we have got in the last 3.5 years. But Carib dollar is more than just a new useful medium for cross-border transfers. It's an opportunity for regional development. First of all, it offers a fast track towards CSME. Why fast track? I come from Europe. We've gone through this process of replacing national currencies by one unified currency for the whole of Europe. Germans are still shedding tears because they lost their mark. French people as well, and the Spanish guys, they have still crisis in pesetas sometimes. So put a complementary currency aside the national currencies. Don't go through this process of getting rid of national currencies. Why should you? Because there's a different solution, and a solution which has already been tested in Switzerland since 90 years is a complementary currency living right next to the Swiss franc, coupled in its value to the Swiss franc. Secondly, this is not a pure private business. This has to be a public-private enterprise, because if you introduce a currency in the long term, a complementary currency, this is macroeconomics. This should be in the hands of those who serve the citizens. So you from CARICOM, the central banks, CTU, regional multilaterals should be in this advisory group, and they are already. CTU and CARICOM public sector organization are in our advisory group and support and have supported, thanks for that, our steps to get here. So essentially, you had the opportunity to design this complementary currency. You had the opportunity to specifically design it for sustainable, regenerative, and inclusive development of the region. And I spend a few minutes on that. Happy to discuss this in more detail. Why inclusivity? Where does this help? Well, it gives easy and cheap access to for MSMEs to cross-border transfers. That's a low-hanging fruit if you introduce something like that. It reduces barriers for regional trade. We just heard about bureaucracy and handmade documents as barriers. This is an even bigger one. If you look into studies, the cost for cross-border transfers hinder regional trade. It could double if you just get rid of these barriers within the financial system. Finally, and that's a pathway we're taking at the moment, integrate Carib dollar into regional development initiatives like 25 by 2025. We'll be talking about that in St. Vincent next week in the Caribbean Week of Agriculture. That's where these things really work. You have to combine a payment mechanism with regional initiatives. Then you do change. And that's what I want to invite you to. And look a little bit at sustainability and regeneration. First of all, you can strengthen regional value shops. So don't just think from producer to distributor to seller, but there's a lot around it. There are a lot of suppliers, supporters of all these people doing agri-trade and agribusinesses. And getting back to the picture I drew in the beginning, let Carib dollar flow and crisscross through the region, build value shops, and catch the value in the region and don't send it to international banks. That's the idea in here. Secondly, Carib dollar has a stable value because of collaterals. We start with national currencies. Next step could be Caribbean commodities. Think about a board of Carib dollar deciding on which collaterals you want to use, be it honey, be it bauxite, be it oil, whatever from the region. There are even economics who say, well, you could tokenize beaches and rainforests and take them as backing for currencies, which is quite an interesting thing to follow, maybe with a cocktail or a wine. Finally, we need regional governance to make this a success. So, where are we now? So this is not theory anymore. On July 23rd, 2024, we did the first cross-border transfer of Carib dollar in Barbados, Bridgetown. 3 central banks were fully aware of what we were doing there, fully informed, no objection from there. CTU, CPSO supported it. Goddard's 3 subsidiaries of Goddard's Enterprises Limited in Trinidad, Tobago, Barbados, and St. Vincent the Grenadines did real-life public transfers of Carib dollars. So this thing already exists. Technology is there. We're applying for the license. Things have been uploaded after we sent these fees and waited for 6 weeks. And it has been used. And this is our roadmap. We'll do a next public transfer next week. Will be publicly transferred. So you can watch it online. 9 to 10:30 is the session on Tuesday. We're in the middle of team, and this is the important thing, network building. That's what I'm doing here. I invite you to be part of this voyage towards a complementary currency for the Caribbean. We need a little bit more product development, but that's not core. This whole thing is built on blockchain. We know how to do that. That's not a problem anymore. We need good services, we need good networks, and need good governance. So this is our team at the moment. This is our advisory group at the moment. And at the end, I hope we can all go for gold together, and we want to have it, you want to have it, Carib dollar. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And you finished well within time. And again, this is fairly disruptive in depending on the manner in which you think about it. But again, we have a little time. Are there any questions, any observations, anything about this that you have?
Yeah,
please,
well,
Mike.
Yeah, okay, yeah, it's on. Yeah. But I was just wondering, the CTU has 20, no, it's on. It has 20 member states. Oh, yeah, sure. Sorry, I was facing, yeah, it has 20 member states. Can we use Carib dollar to do the transactions between the member states and ourselves? Could we do that? Because at the moment we spend a lot of money on wire transfer fees. So is this something that we could look at?
Trevor, let me say that just so everyone can hear it. The question is, can we use Carib dollar to do transactions between banks and individuals? Is that what you're saying?
Between CTU member states and the CTU secretariat.
Oh, you mean for us?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
I think the answer is yes.
I love that idea. So the first use case we're thinking about is B2B, business to business, direct transfers. There's no bank between it anymore. As soon as you have your wallet, you can send Carib dollar from your account to the account of another party. Second thing we're already discussing with some government agencies, why don't we use it to pay taxes related to trade? So make it a fluent experience. And at some point, together with our advisory group or governance board, wherever this goes, we will have to discuss, is this something for a citizen? Is this B2C? Is this C2C? Or is this G2B, so government to business? These are decisions I can bring in front of you. I'll be happy to advise you on what to do, but it's you who decide it. It's not us as CaribCoin or the mother company, EUCC, deciding on what's right for the Caribbean. Because if you look at this at the end, you can build your own Caribbean inflation with it. You can do macroeconomics with it. You have your own something quasi-Fed-like thing here. So you really design a complementary currency for the needs of trade in the Caribbean.
Yeah, I would encourage people to find out as much as they can about this. Your ministries of trade, your ministries of finance, your central banks, make sure that they are aware of these opportunities and what is possible so that they can be fully aware of what is happening and be able to take advantage of it if they so choose to get involved with it. But thank you very much, John. It's been very good. Please. Next, we have Dr. Dale Alexander dealing with the ELAC initiative. And of course, he's from the ECLAC Sub-Region Office of the Caribbean. So, Dale, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Minister, Secretary General. All protocols observed. And on behalf of the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, and in particular, the Director of the Division of Production and Productivity and Management, and my particular office, the Sub-Regional Headquarters for the Caribbean. I want to thank the Caribbean Telecommunications Union for this opportunity to remind, I think, in the most case, or certainly make us aware of the upcoming ELAC experience that's going to take place on the 5th to the 8th of November. And yes, there we go, good. So as I believe most of you would be aware, the digital agenda for the Caribbean has been an ongoing process for the past 19 or so years. And we've seen some 8 or so iterations of the digital agenda, beginning since 2005. And we, in 2022, delivered the ELAC 2024 digital agenda, which, as you see there, included some 31 strategic policy areas. With ELAC 2026, we have changed a little bit, or at least refined the way the agenda is developed. As you see there, it's developed along 3 major pillars: accelerate, inclusion, and transformation. Accelerate in terms of the productivity and strategic sectors. Inclusion, in terms of ensuring that the citizen continues to be at the center of this experience, and ensuring that the transformation is certainly whole of society and whole of government. And it's built upon 3 major axes, as you see there: the issue of meaningful and universal connectivity, governance, and certainly innovation and artificial intelligence. What I'm here to do, and that's the pitch about ELAC 2026. What I'm here to do is to, as I said, maybe remind, but certainly those who are not aware, to inform that on the 5th to the 8th of November in Santiago, Chile, we'll be having 2 events. The first is the EU-LAC high-level dialogue on artificial intelligence and meaningful connectivity, and that will be followed immediately by the ministerial meeting for the adoption of the regional agenda on digital transformation. The good news is that ECLAC is supporting the travel of delegations to these meetings in November. As far as I'm aware, all invitations and notifications have been sent out. If you haven't received these, you can certainly speak to me afterwards. But the key takeaway here then is, having received these invitations and notifications, it is incumbent upon you to please respond and please be a part of this experience. I think I'm right, I see Shelly-Ann Clark-Hines, yes, who has been very much a part of this from, if not the first, certainly the second or third, early on in this process. And I'm not aware of other faces, so you'll forgive me if there are others in the room here. But this is a Latin America and Caribbean experience. It's a digital agenda for the region. And it's important that we, in the Caribbean, be at the table. We have the opportunity to be at the table, and that we be at the table to influence the experience and to ensure that it is instructive and takes into consideration, in our case, the issues of being SIDS. Those are not the experiences of our Latin American experience, sisters and brothers. So with that said, again, the invitations, notifications have gone out. Please respond and indicate your attendance. And with that, I thank you. And I think I have another 24 seconds that I could ramble on, but I will stop here. Thank you very much.
Please. Dale, thank you. And again, just to reiterate the importance of sending your replies, Dale has his information there. Also note that these presentations, once they're received and cleared for publication will be put onto the website, the CTU's website, for your consumption and utilization. So we're doing quite good for time. Again, I thank my presenters for doing such a good job. Next up, we have a presentation on digital inclusion initiatives. This is going to be done by Mrs. Cynthia Ruddock Downs, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Telecommunications Authority of Trinidad and Tobago. CEO, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm really pleased to be here, so thank you to the CTU. So this is going to be done. I'll start off first with the overview. How you do this? Sorry? All right, okay, yeah, right. Good. A little bit about the Telecommunications Authority of Trinidad and Tobago, the overview of the Trinidad and Tobago ICT market, a little bit on the ICT or the ITU Global Regulatory Outlook of 2023, achieving digital inclusion and universal connectivity, a little bit about our Digital Inclusion Survey 2021, the outcome and findings, some things about our universal service initiatives and public outreach activities that are aimed at connecting the unconnected, and what policies and initiatives are important to expand internet connectivity. It's not moving. Yeah. Okay, so a little bit about us. We were started, the Telecoms Authority of Trinidad and Tobago, by an act of Parliament in 2004 with our responsibility to create an open market for telecommunications, ensuring the orderly development of telecommunications, protecting and promoting the public interest, facilitating universal access to telecoms, encouraging investment in telecommunications, and regulating broadcasting services. So a little bit about our vision, mission, and core values. We aim to be the leading regulator in the ICT sector, enabling an empowered and connected society. And our mission, we will continue developing a dynamic, collaborative environment, progressive ICT environment, although we would like an efficient environment as well, with quality, affordable, universal service and innovation. And then we have our core values, which are important to us all, of innovativeness, commitment, integrity, professionalism, and service excellence. We have a strategic plan, and our strategic focus has been on universal connectivity, quality connectivity, sustainability of our industry, and that is most important for us because sustainability means jobs. It means the ability of our service providers to provide the services that we need. It's about organizational effectiveness and, of course, regional harmonization and empowerment. So we always try to give as much information as possible about our market. And so, with a population of 1.4 million, we have 2 mobile operators. We currently have 99% 3G coverage. We have 94% 4G LTE coverage. And 92% of homes currently subscribe to a broadband network. We have 63% mobile internet penetration, and that's based that's calculated on the ITU rules, so it may appear to be a little bit lower than others. And we have some 5G micro deployment in existence. So this is a synopsis of where we are overall.
Just one second, sorry not to interrupt. 92% homes to subscribe to broadband services. That is irrespective of medium. So that could be fixed, it could be wireless, it could be anything. I just find it's a high number. That's why I'm
Yes,
asking.
it's very high now.
So it's
yes.
not limited to fixed connectivity, it's all.
It's all.
Okay,
It's all.
Thank you.
And the average number of households in Trinidad and Tobago is just over 400,000. So it's about 404,000 households in Trinidad and Tobago. So yes, the broadband penetration. And you will see later on how much that has increased since we did our digital inclusion survey a couple of years ago. So a little bit about who we are as well. We are currently recognized as a G4 regulator by the ITU. And G4 regulation is characterized by integrated regulation led by economic, social, policy goals. We collect market data, quarterly data from authorized service providers in the telecommunications and broadcasting markets. And the collated data is published in an annual market report. And a lot of the information you see today is from our annual market report of 2023, December 2023. And we also have quarterly market updates. So if you visit our website, you'd see quarterly updates, perhaps up until the end of June. Now, we believe that there are currently no unserved areas in Trinidad and Tobago. However, the results of the digital divide and the digital inclusion surveys show that there are underserved geographical areas and population groups in the country. And that is what we will concentrate a lot of our efforts on. So I wanted to provide some information on the statistics from out of our market report. And the first, if you concentrate on the left, it's the fixed voice subscriptions. And you'll notice from 2019 to 2023, we have been up and down, but largely we are down from 2019, and that's obvious what is happening to voice. And voice tends to be household-based, so it's about just over 300,000. Our mobile voice subscriptions were always well in excess of our population numbers, and we, again, over the years 2019 to 2023, we are around 2 million voice subscriptions, mobile voice subscriptions, and that's with 2 mobile operators in the market. Fixed internet, as I mentioned, if you see, you can have a look at the climb from 2019 to now, 2023. This was the end of 2023, and based on the performance in the first and second quarter of this year, the subscriptions are a little bit higher as well. So fixed internet subscriptions are in excess of 400,000.
Again, CEO, just something to notice, and again, it's just for me to understand it. The fixed internet subscriptions keep going up. The fixed internet penetration was trending in the same way, and then it declined in 2023. Is there a reason that they have for that, or something changed in the numbers?
Yes, in 2023 we had, 2023 was a very good year because I think coming out of COVID, we started to move upwards. In 2023 was really the pinnacle. But so far for this year, and certainly towards the end of 2023 is when we began to see a little bit of a reduction. But we are hoping that in 2024, that situation would not be as it is, as it appears right now. Subscription television has been undergoing a little bit of a reduction, and we are looking at those numbers because remember, for us, it's about sustainability of the industry. And over the past 5 years, from 2019 to 2023, we've seen a reduction in subscription television. That doesn't mean that people are not watching television. It's just another source, perhaps, or other sources. Okay, so those are the statistics we have available, but there are several more on our website in our 2023 report and also in our quarterly reports for the first and second quarter of 2024. So the ITU has a global regulatory outlook, and they've identified a change focus. They are looking at universal access and services, broadband infrastructure development and investment, and digital transformation. And for us at the authority, we tend to spend a lot of time analyzing the direction of the ITU and also looking at how, as a country, Trinidad and Tobago should also move forward with the direction given by the ITU. So under universal access and service, they're looking at obligations to fixed, mobile, and internet providers, universal service funds, something that has become quite significant to us in the Caribbean, and I dare say elsewhere, broadband stimulus plans, ICT master plans, NGN, NGA strategies, and then on the digital transformation, we have digitization, digital economy, digital development, and smart cities.
See if you can just go back to that slide 1 minute, please.
Previous.
I'm asking my fellow ministers, members, excellencies, to have a look at the column on the extreme right.
Previous.
And in it, you will see what is considered to be, one more, I think. Come on.
Right.
Yes, the digital enablers, the ones on the extreme right. 5G, 6G, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, and digital assets. These seem to be the things that are being stifled in all of our regions. Notice that they are classified as enablers. If we plan to and intend to continue along the path that we want, these are things that we have to start to ascribe, subscribe to, and promote within what we're doing. It was worthy of notice.
Yes.
CEO, thank you for the accommodation.
Yes, Chair, and I should add that a lot of the approaches that we are getting now as an authority are in this region. Internet of Things, AI, and digital assets, as well as 5G. So operators are also looking at the future, and they're also approaching regulators on these matters as well. So I just want to get into a little bit about the concept of universal service. Universal service is achieved when ICTs are available, accessible, and affordable, and are delivered on either a household or an individual basis. Universal service is therefore based on 3 fundamental principles: ICT availability, ICT accessibility, and ICT affordability. All of those 3 come together to create an environment of universal service. So in implementing universal service, we are guided by the statutory requirements of the Telecoms Act and Universal Service Regulations. So what do we do in achieving universal and meaningful connectivity? We look at the digital divide and the level of digital inclusion. And of course, everybody should know that the digital divide is the gap that exists between those who have access to ICTs and those who do not, and that the gap occurs between and within population groups, for example, persons with disabilities, age groups, socioeconomic status, income level or unemployment, and also geographic areas, for example, municipalities, communities, urban, rural classifications, and regions and countries. So it's not static in any particular area. It involves population groups, geographic areas, regions, and countries. So we did a digital inclusion survey in 2021 with the results shared in 2022, and some of you here may be familiar with some of this information. But what we tried to do was to measure the number of ICT users in Trinidad and Tobago, to determine the extent of the digital divide, to benchmark the progress of our ICT development against other countries, identify population groups and areas most at risk at being digitally excluded, and to inform the choice of universal service and digital transformation initiatives at TAT, and to support the country's Vision 2030, macroeconomic goals, and national ICT plan, and also to support international obligations such as the UN Sustainable Development Goals and the ITU Connect 2030 agenda. I think what's important in identifying our inclusion initiatives is for you to recognize, and for us all to recognize, that a number of factors play their part. The enabling environment for operators to operate and provide their services. It's also about the rules, the regulations, the frameworks that we put together. It's the policies that have come from the government. And all of this is an ecosystem that helps us to determine what services we're providing, how persons are included, and to make sure that they are not left behind. So what we found back then, and some of this has changed when it comes to information on our subscriber numbers and so on. Overall, 79% at that time of the population of Trinidad and Tobago, 5 years and older, used the internet. And then internet, interestingly, internet usage among females as a percentage of the total female population is 85%, compared with 83% among males. Then, according to the ITU, ownership of mobile phones is an important tool to reduce gender inequality. And what we found in Trinidad and Tobago, that females are slightly ahead of males with respect to mobile phone ownership. Females accounted for 51% of the overall sample of respondents. So we're looking at the figures here, 88% and 89%. It's not the same in many countries. This is something that's important, a dashboard that you can look at later on, but it tells us, gives us a lot more information about access, ICT access at home, mobile and fixed telephone subscriptions, mobile and fixed broadband subscriptions at that time. So as you can see, at that time, we had 365,289. We now have over 400,000 subscriptions, fixed internet subscriptions. And this slide, which again is a dashboard, shows the percentage of the population actually using the internet. Very useful information. All of this we use to determine the types of initiatives that we needed to do in order to make sure that we were providing the right sort of support. So here are some of the initiatives. TT Wi-Fi. We're very proud of this. This is a project that we've been doing with the government of Trinidad and Tobago to provide connectivity to public areas. This is particularly for those who are visiting doing business in government spaces, for example, libraries, transportation hubs, hospitals, health centers. And currently, these are the projects that we've actually completed. We've completed 12 transport hubs, 23 libraries, 61 primary schools, 77 health institutions. So we have a total of 173 TT Wi-Fi locations that provide public Wi-Fi for a period of up to 1 hour initially and then a second hour, so up to 2 hours, while you're waiting to do business. We have a Persons with Disabilities initiative where we attempt to connect those persons with disabilities, and we provide a subsidy for the purchase of a mobile phone, a smartphone, with the facilities, accessible facilities for persons with disabilities. And that subsidy is $600 TT per person. And so far, we've provided 1,800 PWDs with mobile phones to date. At one point, we had provided 10,000 devices for students of schools, secondary schools in particular, and those devices, many of them are still in use. And at that time, we also provided connectivity. Another project we have are ICT access centers, and those centers are intended to be centers of learning, so to assist with upskilling the population, and also providing the opportunity for them to connect to the internet. Many of them may have, for some facilities at home, maybe a mobile phone, but they don't have facilities that would provide them with everything they need to be able to do their work. And then, of course, we have infrastructure projects, and we've recently completed an infrastructure project in Tobago where we're providing internet services to 300 inhabitants, 300 persons who live in that area, and they have up to gigabit speeds in those locations. And what we've done as well is, in collaboration with the service provider, we have made sure that what they pay for the service is actually the lowest that you can get in Trinidad and Tobago. So because of the subsidy we've provided with the Universal Service Fund, they have been able to get services in Palatuve, Bloody Bay, Lansfomé, those areas of Tobago at much lower cost than other locations. And we intend to continue with more infrastructure projects. As a matter of fact, we have 10 projects we're hoping to start in the new financial year. Digital skills, you may not have noticed, but from the digital inclusion survey, we found that although 75% of our population had basic digital skills, only 4% had advanced. So now Trinidad and Tobago, and including the authority, we are on a mission to upskill our population to make sure that we could continue to contribute to the digital society. And so we are currently partnering with the Ministry of Digital Transformation on phase 2 of one of their programs, their We Learn program, to bring digital skills to specific members of the population. And hopefully, once that project is through, we can start next year with that. And we intend to, for small-scale fishers, as had been mentioned earlier by Tariq, they would be one of the groups that we'll be looking at. Also senior citizens and persons with disabilities. We also have consumer awareness and public outreach activity programs that we do on a regular basis. And as many of you do in the Caribbean, Girls in ICT Day, but we also now have an Empowering Men program that we bring out every July of the year. In this way, we involve young men in making that connection, in building businesses and trying to become entrepreneurs and things like that. So that is one of our newer projects, and we're very pleased with the outcome. We have a little bit more information here. I think I might be, how am I doing for time? 5 minutes, okay. So Our universal service framework details intervention needed to facilitate 100% of the population having accessible to affordable basic telecommunication services, including internet. And details of the initiatives to be implemented to close the digital divide. We've also done a 5G framework. Now, we are a technology neutral regulator. However, because 5G was so different and more advanced than the other technology, we felt it was important that we do a 5G framework. We also developed a little more work on 5G networks than we would have done under technology neutrality. And this is intended to improve and promote connectivity and to encourage the private sector in joining us in providing those 5G networks for us. I also have a little bit about our National Digital Transformation Strategy, which is led by our Ministry of Digital Transformation and our Honorable Minister. And it's, again, with this in the background, we also take these pillars into account in determining the projects and initiatives that we move forward with. And my closing remarks, according to the ITU's Digital Regulatory Outlook, 2.7 billion people worldwide remain unconnected. And that's important for us to know, and some of them are within our region. The digital divide persists in rural areas in particular, across income, gender, and age groups, and new and deep divides have emerged for vulnerable groups. So we need relevant, appropriate universal services, universal service projects to be implemented to bridge the digital divide and promote digital inclusion. Change and incremental improvements are needed in policy and regulation. Without this, people will still be left behind. We have a number of useful resources that you can go to get a little bit more information and to get a little bit more in-depth look at Trinidad and Tobago and our digital transformation strategy as well. And thank you. Thank you very much.
CEO, thank you very much. And just two things to mention. As we move forward and you keep hearing about these divides and or what's the correct word for that? What's the right word for that? When you're not fully, yeah, the word has escaped me. But part of what we're trying to do, and I don't know how many of you, because I'm sure it's different in every island, you have to define what is the minimum requirement for broadband. And if you use a universal thing for it, and I'm saying it's different in every island and every country, because your usage patterns according to your customers are different. If you follow what, I don't know what the ITU has defined broadband as, I can't remember what the US has defined broadband as, but it may or may not be applicable to you. Underserved is the word I was looking for. And one of the things that you may find strange when you do your own inclusion surveys is that the underserved places are not in the rural areas, that you have underserved places in your urban areas. And that is because the thing there is not coverage, but the fact that you have to have something that is usable and available. So please be aware of it. It's good information we have on this side. As we move on, we're now going to deal with progress under the EU Digital Alliance. And for that, Mr. Felix Hernandez Shaw will do this. He's available. He's online. He's not live here with us. He's online. And he's the director for Latin America and the Caribbean under the European Union. So I'm sure you can hear us, Felix, but please just say hello. Let's make sure we're hearing you well. Felix?
Yeah, here I am.
There we go.
There you go. In fact, I'm in the island of Grenada.
Felix, could you just say something again? Let's just make sure we're hearing you properly.
I am in the island of Grenada.
Ah, you're in a good place. Good.
Yes,
good to hear you. All right, so
in the
please.
Sargasso.
So then, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, ministers of the Caribbean Telecommunications Union. Thanks a lot for giving the European Union space to intervene today, present the EU-LAC Digital Alliance. This is an alliance that we proposed to the region a year ago. That was sanctioned by many of the Latin American Caribbean region member states in the summit in July 2023. And we wanted to briefly present what has been going on, what are the main features of it, and how can the Caribbean gain access, gain participation in the different meetings that we have. We have a little PowerPoint presentation that I'm told you will help me run through it.
Yes, we will. So proceed. Just indicate when you need it. Yeah.
Yes. Thanks a lot. Well, that is me. I work for the European Commission. I'm in charge of the European Union budget for Latin America, Caribbean, and in that context, together with the rest of the European institutions and member states, we have agreed on a digital alliance with Latin America, Caribbean, which was signed in next slide, please. Next slide. No, one before that. There you go. So we agreed to work together on the digital divide, including specific for the Caribbean. You know these figures by heart. You're probably as worried as you are on this. And of course, the important thing is that we all see the advantages of investing in digital infrastructure. But we also see that potential digital economy and society is not only important country by country, but the economies of scale that we have, but also the regional approach is very important if we all want to gather our thoughts on this. Satellite connectivity, data centers, high-performance computing, all these kinds of things for which it is important to have a regional approach, just as we're having it in the European Union, increasingly have a regional approach in common market, internal market union, where we have lots of economies of scale on the region. Next slide. Thank you. So the Digital Alliance was in a way endorsed by many states from both regions. It's an informal coordination framework where we try and bring a number of issues that both regions have identified as important for. And we do it in a way that's human-centric, where, as you can see, governments regulate, business innovate, but we work on data security and citizen data protection, which have to be at the center. So we work on technology that serves the people and protects the people and its data, and not the other way around. So as we work together in digital transition, what we see is standard setting is very important in order to deploy innovation, deploy investment, but also things that we're talking about in the digital alliance, such as data protection, governance, artificial intelligence, electronic ID systems, and development of cybersecurity capabilities. You will all remember the famous COVID certificate. Some of the countries in the region in Latin America could have their citizens access Europe because they had a COVID certificate that could be validated by European digital authorities. At the same time, this is not only about the infrastructure, it's also about policy coordination, technical assistance, business support. I'll explain that in a minute. And investments in connectivity for the Caribbean and for the greater Caribbean. And one of the main elements that I would like to present is the importance of developing interoperable frameworks, common standards, cybersecurity protocols, things where the different systems from different countries can talk to each other or can procure it, knowing that in Caribbean procurement is a big issue. Next slide, please. Right. So walking the talk, as you can see, we have four different components of the digital alliance. The first big component is the high-level policy dialogues, We have had already three of them. Four of them. Cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, e-governance, and data governance. Data governance is going on as we speak. Your experts from the region are being invited. We had the first meeting in Cartagena de Indias back in November 2023, where we decided that these were the components and the building blocks that we wanted to have. And we also decided that we wanted a specific strand for the Caribbean. The Caribbean would enjoy one strand with the rest of Latin America, but also one specific strand understanding the particularities and the different structure, infrastructure, and data regulatory components that the Caribbean has. As you can see there, next steps are connectivity and inclusion and artificial intelligence in Chile, November 2024, where we will have the ELAC, the Latin American Caribbean conference of ministers, where we invite you to attend. I think ECLAC has already done that. And it's important because we plan to also discuss what more can we do for Latin America and the Caribbean in this context. Apart from that, these policy dialogues, we have three more projects. One you probably have heard about is the Bella Cable that connects Latin America and the Caribbean between Lisbon and Fortaleza in Brazil. And we are trying together with Clara to extend the Bella Cable capacity in the Bella Cable, where, as you can see, EU is the largest investor, where we can connect high education and research networks because of the very large capacity of the cable. We can bring in people like UE and others, where obviously they will enjoy the large capacity of traffic that the Bella Cable enjoys. That also will help work on data, for example, high-performance computing, which requires data, but also Earth observation data. For example, as you can see below, regional Copernicus centers, we are giving access to Copernicus with transferring skills, expertise, and competitive space-related digital services. Let me give you an example from Grenada. We are working this presentation right now as I speak on how Copernicus can help identify major surges of sargassum. So to try and identify them before they arrive to shores. And we're also working, of course, on follow-up to hurricanes, etc., through the privileged access of the Earth observation computing that Copernicus offers. Last but not least, more on the business side, Digital Accelerator is a service that we are starting to set up that tries to bring startups from both sides, European startups and Latin American Caribbean startups, and bringing them together with bigger corporates or scaled-up corporates that will be looking for solutions, for technical solutions that companies either side of the Atlantic can provide. This is very important also because it does provide a window opportunity to a big market for Caribbean startups, and it offers, of course, a key matchmaking service that we are providing for all of you. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah. Thank you. At the same time, we have some specific issues we're working on that I want to share with you. First of all, the Regional Cyber Competence Center for establishing the Dominican Republic provides expertise, cybersecurity, and crime. So that we can build together a cyber capacity in Latin America, in the Caribbean. A digital financial inclusion program together with OCS and Trinidad and Tobago that allows for developing legislation, enabling environment, enabling innovative frameworks, etc. Data centers in Trinidad and Tobago, and island-wide broadband access, like, for example, we're doing also with Jamaica through digital technologies and education. Next slide. Who is the partner, the European partner of the Digital Alliance? Well, you can see there it's the EU institutions, so the European Commission, EU agencies, European investment banks, etc. The 27 member states with their bilateral partnerships and programs, so the different cybersecurity agencies, data protection agencies, satellite capacities, etc. And then we have the leading implementing agencies and institutions of the programs that I just mentioned. And you see there a wide offer of people: the European Space Agency, Expertise France, the e-governance academy from Estonia, Tecnalia is a Spanish firm, the European Investment Bank, ECLAC, the Economic Commission for Latin American Caribbean, Red Clara, which is a network of universities and research institutes from education purposes that is working on the Bella cable, the D4D hub, where a large number of financiers from Europe get together to coordinate their efforts in Latin America and the Caribbean, and FIAP and GIZ, which are the Spanish and German homologues of Expertise France. Next slide. So what's up next? I think I already announced a number of things, but I will run it through you very quickly. Latin America and the Caribbean, you have there the members, the people that, the countries that signed up. We just got Guyana signing up a couple of weeks ago, and we have more requests coming from some of you here, particularly in the Caribbean. So welcome on board for all of you. We are looking towards the next EU CELAC summit, and as we do that, we are working a study visit of ministers of digital affairs to the European Union. It's planned for the first trimester of 2025, 1 week to turn around 3 or 4 EU member states and speak to policy and regulatory bodies, 5G, telecoms and operators, cybersecurity centers, startup and innovation centers, investors. This, in my view, is one of the jewels of this operation, because it allows you, the ministers of CTU, to come to Brussels and to come to maybe other capitals of Europe and talk to your real counterparts, talk to the people who are having the same discussion at regional level that you are having on data protection, on cybersecurity, on digitalizing the economy, digitalizing health. And of course, we can also tailor some stuff or some sectors or some conversations according to your wishes. We have a couple of Caribbean-specific initiatives in motion. The study with the CTU on the 5G in the Caribbean, cybersecurity strategy support in the OECS, broadband in Jamaica, and the Tallinn in Estonia, the Tallinn Cyber School for Cybersecurity, capacity building, and cyber resilience. So you understand that this is all about cyber. And then finally, the high-level policy dialogues, where we continue to work with the region on how Europe functions and what are the things we can do together, with a specific strand of work for the Caribbean, as you can see over there. Next slide, and I think this is the one before last. Yeah, it says in conclusion, so it must be. The action plan for the ministerial study trip to the EU, we will need your confirmation that you're interested. Please talk to our regional delegation in Barbados. CTU knows them very well. We also need to understand the promising opportunity of the Bella activity in the Caribbean. But of course, it's a lot of money, because we wanting to reach with cable everyone. And then that's important that strategic co-investment is required. And then, of course, as a follow-up of some of the conversations we had in Cartagena, is the CARICOM Impact Cybersecurity Strategy. We will come back with a 2025 High-Level Digital Alliance Dialogue. You're all cordially invited to it to define what we're taking to the EU CELAC Summit, stuff that we're doing on regional approaches and cooperation, satellite connectivity, cabling, data centers, etc., etc. Last slide, please. Very good. So here we work on the EU CELAC context. The 4th EU CELAC Summit will take place in Colombia the 4th trimester of 2025. We will take stock of the Global Gateway possibilities, but also the EU-LAC Digital Alliance. And of course, we invite all of you to join the decision-making of what are the issues that we're going to ask the summit and we're going to look at all together. Thanks a lot. Apologies for not being here, but we are helping the Prime Minister Mitchell here collect sargassum offshore with 400 people. So I hope I'll be able to join you next time.
Today, and we had him here with us last night. So all good things, and thank you. And just to add an additional thank you to the European Union and all of its work that it's doing within the Caribbean and within the CARICOM and all of our member states. Please continue to support us in our activities, and we certainly will do what we can to further the initiatives within the region and beyond. So thanks again, Mr. Felix Hernandez. Sure.
Thank you very much, Minister. Pleasure. And as you say, if we all commit to do what we can, I think that's already very.
Okay. Are there any questions from the floor for Mr. Hernandez? Sure. Any? Okay. Thanks again, Mr. Hernandez. Sure. Thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you in person next time.
Indeed. I will do my best. Thanks a lot, Minister.
Team, I want to again thank you for your persistence and willingness to stay with us throughout this afternoon's program. A lot was disseminated. I know there was a lot for thought, and I'm sure you will have questions that you will forward to the Secretariat, and I'm sure they'll be forwarded to the appropriate places. As we stand now, we're pretty much at the end. I'm going to ask the Secretary General for a wrap-up and also to give you some additional information as to what we're going to be doing this evening. So please just bear with us a bit longer, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. I'll give way to Francola to speak about the cocktail reception, and then I'll give some closing remarks.
Hi, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. As you would see, you are all invited to a cocktail reception hosted by the Honorable Congress Maynard at the Carambola restaurant. The buses will be at the front of the hotel from 6 p.m. this evening. We're all assembled to leave between 6:30 and 6:45 because the venue is not too far away. As well, you are all invited to a cocktail tomorrow in Nevis, which is hosted by the Premier in Nevis. That will take a little longer for us to get there. So the cocktail starts at 7, so we will try to assemble at 6 to get to the port, and therefore we take a water taxi to Nevis. So we would look to leave here around 6 p.m. But please, those of you who are interested, please leave your information in the Secretariat, which is the Sabre Room, because we need to have sufficient transport for us to get to the, to arrange the correct number of buses. All right, so please leave your name once you are interested in attending these two social events in the Sabre Room, and be in the lobby for 6 p.m. One of the other urgent activities we have the railway tour. We need 50 people, we have 34, so I need a few more persons to, yes? For the, okay, correct. Now today is the deadline, the railway tour is tomorrow. It is not open to those attending GC, so those of you who have a free day tomorrow, you are welcome to the tour, but we do need, yes.
It's just a question. I know the minister had intention to go, but sorry, that during the rail tour there's a ministerial meeting going on in parallel, yeah?
Yes, so unfortunately, those in GC will not be able to attend the tour. All right, so but today is the deadline. As I said, we have 34 persons, we need 50. So please go to Sabre Room if you are interested. It is 40 US, or with the conversion, I think 100 EC. Yes? So please, we're looking for 14 or 13 more persons, 16. All right, so please join us tomorrow on the tour. All right, and also we invite each and every one of you to attend the meetings on Thursday. We have the Commonwealth Connectivity Agenda Legal Forum and Digitalization Working Group meeting. That runs parallel to our regulators meeting on Thursday morning. That is from 9 to 12. We have a Caribnog special meeting, which leads into an awareness forum for the cybersecurity symposium. Some of you all would have registered online for that, so we do ask if you did register to please show up, because those meetings run parallel and we have to provide catering for those events. So if you did register, please remember to attend those parallel meetings on Thursday. You will be sent an evaluation form for the ministerial meeting that took place yesterday. So we are still trying to collate the names of the persons who attended yesterday. So please also fill out your evaluation form once you receive the form. So that's the announcements I have, SG. Okay, so today, just to repeat today's information, a cocktail reception hosted by the Honorable Congress Maynard at Carambola Restaurant. We assemble in the lobby. Please wear your badges for the conference so that we are aware that you are part of the event and you are to be transported. But we assemble in the lobby at 6 p.m. Buses will start to leave at 6:30. All right? So we are in for an enjoyable time tonight, I understand, Minister? Correct. So we look forward to seeing all of you there this evening. Thank you.
Raul, Belize, has a question.
Dress code for tonight?
Dress code. Can you put the cocktail reception back up on the screen for me, please? It's lounge suit. So.
Lounge suit. It says lounge
Correct.
suit. Yeah, this is.
You can ask Minister.
Lounge.
Yeah.
Minister Maynard.
Correct.
I
do think it can be without jacket.
It's a lounge suit.
Mr. Maynard, the question revolves around the dress code for tonight being a lounge suit. Is that accurate? And is that the expectation?
I am not an expert in these things, but I presume it is just business executive, nothing formal, relaxed business. I don't know how to describe that. Maybe that's lounge suit.
Or we say business casual.
Or business casual. Yeah. You don't need a tie. No.
All right. But again, please wear your badges so that we can identify that you are with the event and going to the cocktail. Yes, correct. Yes, thank you.
Right.
Thank you, Francola. I encourage all of you to participate in the reception. There's significant time and investment and hospitality extended by our hosts, and I'm sure it's a beautiful location. Everything has been excellent so far, so I encourage you. Thanks for your participation today. Tomorrow we have the closed session of the General Conference of Ministers. We'll encourage all of our ministers to come and join us tomorrow. So thank you. Have a wonderful evening, and see you later at the reception. Minister, any?
Yeah, no, thank you all. Thanks for your patience, thanks for your persistence, and thanks for your cooperation. Let's enjoy the night. Let's return tomorrow, and let's knock it out the park. Thanks again. Have a good evening, everyone.